Tomozaki is a sweaty loser who gave up on life to grind games because he had no real friends. However, after he beats the most popular gamer girl in a duel, she trains him to become popular, turning him from a Discord mod into a certified shoddy magnet. It all starts in the AV room, where Tomozaki and his normie classmate Nakamura are playing their favorite game, TACFAM. Nakamura may have the looks, but he doesn't know that Tomozaki is the best TACFAM player in Japan, so he beats him easily. After losing and making excuses, Nakamura leaves with his pick-me thoughties to grab some lunch, while Tomozaki walks home feeling lonely and depressed because he has no friends. He judges others for living life as an NPC when in reality, he's a sore loser who envies those who actually enjoy it. At night, he logs into TACFAM and duels a no-name opponent who ranks second on the leaderboard after Tomozaki, so he must activate his sweat mode to keep his #1 spot. Just then, he receives a DM from the no-name, asking him to meet up if he lives in the Kanto region. The next day in class, Tomozaki watches a girl named Hinami boss around Nakamura. Hinami is a top student in both grades, sports, and looks, and her kind character makes her a popular girl in class. Tomozaki starts walking away cause he knows he won't hit it in a million years, but he is shocked when she asks him about his TACFAM match yesterday. Before Tomozaki can answer, Nakamura reluctantly admits he lost before walking away, and Hinami leaves too, after waving him goodbye. After school, he decides to meet up with no name and is shocked to learn that she is actually Hinami. Hinami is just as shocked to learn that Tomozaki is that dead-end loser who's been beating her all this time. The two get to talking, and Hinami, who is usually kind, says that she is let down because the one person she respects is a dull idiot who's given up on life. Tomozaki calls her out for being mean because she thinks she's the S-rank baddie who's better than everyone else. Tired of his biz, Hinami takes him home and takes off all of her makeup so she can show him that she's just as basic as him. She then shows him how she controls her expression and posture, revealing that once she had perfected that, communication and looks come naturally to her. Despite being perfect in everything, she still couldn't be the #1 player in TACFAM, so she thought he would be better than her in every way. However, now that she knows he's one step away from becoming a smelly Discord mod, it infuriates her. Hinami then says that life is a god-tier game that is tied with TACFAM, and it's only natural for someone to pick one over the other. This statement alone changes Tomozaki's whole image of her, and he realizes that if someone like Hinami enjoys life just as much as TACFAM, he should also give it a try. Once he expresses his desire, Hinami starts describing life in gamer terms and later takes him to lunch, so she can explain the basics of character customization. She advises him to wear a mask until he's mastered his facial expression and invites him to the sewing room every day before and after classes. After lunch, they exchange friend codes, and Tomozaki returns home to practice his smile in front of a mirror. The next day, the two of them hold their first meeting, and Hinami gives him his ultimate goal, which is to be satisfied with his life. To get there, he needs to achieve other goals, and the first one is to have someone ask him if he's got a girlfriend. The second is to have someone notice his improved posture and facial expression. And the final is to get a shoddy on his ding-dong before the start of the 3rd year. However, since all of them are too big for him, she gives him a small goal: talk to 3 girls in school. Tomozaki notes how girls in his school either wear a bowtie or a necktie, but there is an unspoken rule that only the top baddies wear neckties. Hinami asks Tomozaki to talk to his neighbors, Yuza and Nanami, and both of these girls are wearing neckties. As for the 3rd girl, he can pick that one on his own. During class, Tomozaki finally summons the courage to ask Yuzu for a tissue, but she says she doesn't have it and asks her friend Fuka to lend him some. As he takes his mask down to show his charming smile, he somehow ends up talking to her, thus completing the task. Afterward, he heads to the home economics class to talk to Nanami, but since Hinami isn't here yet, he decides to wait. However, Nanami notices him and asks why he's here so early, and the guy starts to panic and gives a vague answer. Despite that, Nanami says it's chill, prompting the guy to praise her for being so empathetic. However, this ends up making Nanami laugh, and she teases him for acting like an old fart. Not understanding the situation, Tomozaki keeps yapping like a moron, which makes her laugh even harder. Just then, her friend Tama enters the class and demands to know how Tomozaki managed to make Nanami laugh. Before he can get to it, Nakamura and his friends show up too, and Nanami tells them Tomozaki is actually a clown who made her laugh. When the guys ask him to repeat the joke, they realize that Nanami is a weirdo who is laughing for no reason whatsoever, which starts a small argument between them. They decide to put it to a vote to see who's right and who's wrong, but Tomozaki notices that Tama is acting very strangely for some reason. Just then, Hinami shows up and votes in Nanami's favor, and when Nakamura tries to argue with her, she quickly reminds him that he lost to Tomozaki in TACFAM. She playfully accuses him of being salty and even jokes about his ex Erika dumping him, which makes the whole class laugh at his expense. With that, both Tomozaki and Tama vote in Nanami's favor, and that settles the matter that Nakamura doesn't have a sense of humor. When he finally accepts his defeat, the girls ask him to duel Tomozaki and Takfam to take revenge, and he agrees to do it later. After class, Tama hugs Hinami, thanking her for saving the day with her unmatched aura. Nanami joins them, and after playfully biting Tama's ear, she moves to Hinami and starts tickling her belly, which makes her cookie moist. As things get heated, the two of them are about to kiss, but Nanami gets nervous and pulls back, much to Tomozaki's disappointment. Tomozaki then thanks Hinami for saving his skin, and Nanami joins her again, laughing at the absurd response Tomozaki gave earlier. She then asks him to call her by her first name, Minami, and thus, Tomozaki finishes his task for the day. After school, Hinami tells him that Nakamura has been holding a grudge against him ever since he lost to him in Takum, which is why she roasted him. Since he's popular in class, Nakamura being rude to Tomozaki can cause trouble, so Hinami does this as a protective measure. Afterward, she asks him what he learned today, and Tomozaki admits he is terrible at talking to people. Despite that, Hinami believes he did well in the home economics class, which surprises him. However, she also scolds him because she made Fuka feel weird when he was grinning under his mask, and then he blew his nose in front of her as well, which is bad manners. She then asks if he noticed anything weird, and Tomozaki mentions how Tama was acting very off. Hinami explains that she's a stubborn person, and she won't change her mood just to get along with people. Since Nakamura dominates the conversation, Tama doesn't get along well with him, and they've had their fair share of arguments before too. Hinami wishes she could take care of Tama at all times, but she can't always be with her, so tough luck. She then ends the meeting after telling her that they will fix his posture tomorrow. The next day, she asks him to stand still against the wall and suddenly grabs his cake to see what he's packing. She then asks him to step forward, and Tomozaki finds it much harder to stand still because he's not used to it. After she tells him to take the mask off, she tasks him with talking to her and her friends multiple times throughout the week. She also tasks him with noting the reactions of the girls he talks to so he can better assess whom he will date in the future. For the whole day, he tries to talk to others and even joins Hinami on the walk home from school. When the boys talk about hitting the gym, Tomozaki awkwardly asks if they also train their glutes. Luckily, Hinami steps in and saves the day again. At the bus station, Tomozaki thanks her for the save, and she tells him not to worry about it. She also reveals that he and Minami are getting off at the same station, so he should use this opportunity to talk to her more. Later, as they get off, Minami notices that he's acting rather shy and advises him to cheer up like she always does. Tomozaki replies that always acting so happy-go-lucky is exhausting for him, but she suggests he smiles more often because it'll make him feel better. As they continue, Minami asks if he and Hinami are secretly doing the forbidden ritual, but Tomozaki says she won't let him hit if he were the last man on the planet. This makes her laugh again, and she advises him to bring out his fun side and get rid of this gloom. Tomozaki says he is fine the way he is, and he doesn't need to force himself to have fun, which makes her realize that he and Tama are somewhat similar. However, Minami herself is the complete opposite because she's always trying to have fun, no matter what the situation is. She also says that Tama is going through a lot, and she always acts positive, so she can make life a little easier for her. The next day, Tomozaki tells Hinami everything that happened, and she praises him for having the ability to speak his mind. Tomozaki believes everyone could do that, but then he realizes that Minami just agrees with everyone around her, while Tama says whatever she wants, even if it ruins the mood. She then tells him that having this skill is his golden ticket, which he can use to get out of tough situations. She then asks if he noticed anything else, and Tomozaki mentions the conversation roles. He starts with Minami, who always initiates the conversation with a new topic, and Hinami always expands the topic by sharing a similar experience. By noticing her group, Tomozaki has learned that these roles are essential for a conversation to flow smoothly. Hinami then tells him to master these two skills before shifting the conversation to one of her favorite games, Oinko. After getting a little too excited about it, she collects herself and gives him a whole book of flashcards, which has several story topics he can use as conversation starters. She also gives him a pocket recording and asks him to listen to himself so he can have a better understanding of how stupid he sounds every time he opens his dumb mouth. With that, she tells him to meet her at the station on the weekend, because he will be spending the entire day with her. That Saturday, Tomozaki shows up late at the mall and immediately apologizes to Hinami, but she decides to let it slide because, for once, he actually hasn't dressed as a homeless New Yorker. When he asks why they're at the mall, she flashes a mischievous smile, which makes him nervous about what she's got planned. She then drags him into a clothing store and says it's time to change his outfit since his fashion sense is clearly on life support. Pointing at a mannequin, she explains it's smart to buy outfits displayed on mannequins because the store staff usually put real effort into coordinating those looks. So it's like borrowing a professional style without needing to think too hard. After Tomozaki picks an outfit he likes, she tells him to go ask the store clerk if he can try it on. To avoid having a conversation, he says he thought he could just buy the whole thing directly, but Hinami explains that he needs to find his actual size first. When he hesitates again, she teases him for being a wussy and tells him to just repeat the simple sentence she gave him. But when Tomozaki finally walks up to the clerk, he blanks out, forgets his lines, and ends up asking to buy the mannequin instead of the outfit. Hinami just stares at him like she's walking around with a malfunctioning NPC. Later, they go to a restaurant, and Tomozaki assumes this is another training session, but Hinami says they're just grabbing lunch to pass the time before his haircut appointment. When he picks something from the menu, she shows him her own choice and suggests they share both dishes. While waiting, she brings up the voice recorder she gave him and asks what he learned from listening to it. Tomozaki admits that he sounds like a moron and has noticed that he mumbles a lot. Hinami praises him for noticing, then tells him he needs to work on expression and voice because right now he's just a low-budget moist critical. To train that, she gives him a challenge. Speak only using vowel sounds for the rest of the conversation while expressing emotion through gestures and facial expressions. Just then, their server walks over with their food, and they are shocked to realize it's Fuka. Hinami greets her politely, and Fuka seems surprised to see the two of them hanging out. When she walks away, Hinami suddenly declares that Fuka will be Tomozaki's first heroine of his playthrough, which catches him completely off guard. She explains that of all the girls he's interacted with so far, Fuka is the most likely to let him slap her. She points out that when Tomozaki asked Yuma for tissues earlier, Fuka had already pulled some out, and when delivering food, she called Tomozaki's name first even though she was closer to Hinami. Tomozaki finds it weird to try and date someone just because of a theory, but since he agreed to play the game of life, he decides to see it through. The next day in the sewing room, Tomozaki proudly announces that he hit a small goal because his little sister noticed that he's not a complete loser anymore. Hinami gives him credit for his effort, pointing out that he's clearly working on his posture and expressions, and says effort matters just as much as the results. She then gives him his next quest, to go somewhere with a girl from school. Tomozaki realizes this basically means a date, but Hinami tells him to just talk to Yuzu twice a day. He asks why she wants him to talk to a different girl when she just said Fuka was the one, and Hinami explains that building casual relationships with other girls will raise his social credit and might make him get laid sooner. In class, he tries to start a conversation with Yuzu by asking about an English assignment, but she hasn't done it yet. He tries to keep the chat going but fails to find another topic, which makes Yuzu lose interest. When she walks away, he calls himself an idiot but is distracted by a text from Hinami, saying she'll be late for their meeting. After class, he tries to talk to Yuzu again, but she walks past him without noticing. Later in the sewing room, she encourages him to keep trying, and when he still looks unsure, she smacks his cake and tells him to get it together. She gives him a lecture about how to learn from one's failure, and Tomozaki agrees to try again. Throughout the week, Tomozaki keeps trying to talk to Yuzu but fails every time. During their daily meetings, Hinami gives him feedback, and by Friday he awkwardly asks Yuzu if her cardigan is new. When she says it's the same one she always wears, he feels dumb and heads to the library. While he's sitting there sulking, Fuka shows up and mentions that she always sees him there, and assumes he must really like the author of the book he's holding. Tomozaki realizes he's only been grabbing random books without knowing the content, but when Fuka says she's a fan of the author, he pretends to be one. After exchanging a few words, Fuka gets up close and quietly tells him that she is also writing a novel. She offers to let him read a story she wrote and asks for feedback, which stuns him. When he hesitates to answer, she assumes he is not interested and apologizes. However, he quickly tells him that he would love to read it, and she promises to get him a copy next time. She also tells him to keep it a secret because she hasn't told anyone else, and Tomozaki realizes this is the closest he's ever gotten to getting laid. After she leaves, he meets with Hinami and confesses that he lied about liking the author. Hinami says it's not the end of the world, and if he gets a chance to go on a date with Fuka, they can still enjoy it without talking about books. Tomozaki still feels it's dishonest, but Hinami tells him not to use it as an excuse to run away. She then says he passed this week's task even though he couldn't talk to Yuzu much. When he looks confused, she explains that just like in a game, even if you fail a mission, you gain experience and can continue from where you left off. On his way home, Tomozaki sees Yuzu sitting alone, but since he's completed his task, he wonders if he should talk to her or not. Eventually, he approaches her but forgets how to speak. That's when he remembers Hinami telling him to read faces, so he comments that she looks kind of down. Yuzu immediately snaps back and says she's fine, which makes the guy nervous. Tomozaki apologizes and starts to walk away, but she suddenly asks him to teach her how to play takfum, leaving him completely speechless. As they head home, Yuzu tells Tomozaki she normally walks with Nakamura, but lately he's been too focused on practicing takfam after school. She says she offered to play with him once, but he told her to play Candy Crush instead, which annoyed her. Wanting to prove him wrong, she bought her own copy of the game and started practicing on her own. Tomozaki figures she hasn't made much progress and listens as she vents about how clueless Nakamura is. She also brings up that Erika confessed to him recently, but he rejected her. Yuzu assumed he liked her since they were always together, but now she feels completely brushed off. She hopes he'll give her if she becomes his favorite gamer girl, so she invites Tomozaki home to train her. At Yuzu's place, Tomozaki easily beats her in a match and explains his approach in sweaty gamer boy jargon. She stares at him like he's speaking alien, but he suddenly gets an idea and shows her a short jump move she can practice to level up faster. When he fails to do it, he pulls out a stopwatch that stops only on long presses and tells her to practice her short jumps here. He gets so excited that he assertively tells her to practice during class breaks and even at home, only to realize he's unintentionally copying Hinami's body language. He then shows her a saved match between her and Hinami and says she should memorize it if she wants to beat Nakamura. Yuzu struggles to follow his advice, so he writes down the instructions for her to make it easier. When she asks why he puts so much effort into it, Tomozaki explains that he plays because he loves it, not because he wants attention or popularity. She says being that good shows he never touches grass, and he admits he doesn't really care. What matters more to him is setting a goal and pushing himself to reach it. Yuzu politely said she'd never want to live like that and doesn't understand how he finds joy without friends, which makes her sad. Tomozaki admits he used to think life was a trash game until he met a gamer girl who could compete with him and opened his eyes to something better. Thanks to her, he started trying harder and found out life wasn't as bad as he thought. With the mood lightened, he tells Yuzu she can change if she wants, just like how people level up in a game. A few days later, Tomozaki meets Hinami at a cafe, and she praises him for not screwing up his time with Yuzu. She then asks if he's asked Fuka out yet, and when he says no, she gives him 2 movie tickets and tells him to use them once he's ready. That night, while practicing how he'd ask Fuka out using his voice recorder, he accidentally plays one of Hinami's old recordings. It appears to be the one where she practiced teasing Nakamura after Erika dumped him and listening to it. He realizes how much effort she puts into being the perfect version of herself. The next day, Yuzu shows Tomozaki that she's made significant improvement on her short jump, which makes him proud. Later, he runs into Fuka in the library and finally admits he's never actually read any of her favorite books and only picked one because it was near his seat. He admits he usually just sits there planning game strategies in his head. Fuka asks how he responded to her secret phrase, and he says it happened to be on the page he opened. He apologizes for lying and tells her he'd still like to talk with her, even if they don't share the same interests. He adds that he's now genuinely interested in reading those books and asks if they can read them together. Fuka smiles and agrees, and as they part ways, Tomozaki tells himself he'll ask her out when the time feels right. Just as he's about to leave school, Nakamura's friends stop him and drag him to the old Av room, where Nakamura's waiting for a rematch. Before the match starts, Tomozaki says he heard he's been practicing a lot, and the conversation slightly shifts to Nakamura being jealous about the fact that he's befriended Yuzu. Just then, Yuzu walks in with Erika, and when Nakamura tells them to leave, they insist on staying. Tomozaki easily defeats him in the first match and decides to leave, but Nakamura refuses to quit and demands another round. Hinami, who was waiting for Tomozaki in the sewing room, arrives and quietly watches as Tomozaki keeps winning. As the match continues, everyone watches quietly, and Nakamura becomes increasingly frustrated with each loss. When he refuses to give up, Erika finally speaks up and tells Nakamura to give it a rest. When he calls her a creep, she mocks him for embarrassing himself and says she only confessed to him because he was popular, not because she actually liked him. Nakamura snaps back, saying he doesn't care what she thinks, but Erika continues to humiliate him. In the end, she mocks him for taking a stupid game so seriously, but Tomozaki cuts in and tells her to shut up. He says she has no right to insult something she's never tried, and adds that even if Nakamura is losing, at least he's trying. He says effort deserves respect, and the one thing he hates more than someone insulting his favorite game is someone mocking someone else's hard work. As he continues to rant, Yuzu hesitantly supports him and says she's been practicing herself and understands how it feels. However, Erika gets fed up and leaves with her friends. Yuzu collapses to her knees, overwhelmed with emotion, and Nakamura thanks her for backing him up. He gathers his stuff and tells Tomozaki they'll play again someday. Once the others leave, Tomozaki realizes that Hinami has been there all this time and never said a word. A few days later, Tomozaki and Hinami go to a restaurant, and he mentions that Nakamura hasn't been bothering him much anymore. He asks if she has anything to do with it, but she avoids the question and brings up Fuka again. He says he's still waiting for the right time to ask her out and pulls out the tickets, jokingly asking if Hinami wants to join him instead. She says she's busy with club activities, but suggests they watch a different movie together another time. Tomozaki agrees, and even though he's not sure why he's happy, he decides to go with the flow and enjoy it. For the next few days, Tomozaki continues to have meetings with Hinami about improving his life. At night, he plays TACFAM with her and even practices how to speak on the recorder she gave him. He also browses through the flashcards so he can find a topic to discuss in school. The next day in class, Tomozaki casually brings up Nakamura's upcoming birthday to Yuzu, but she starts freaking out, which makes Tomozaki wonder if he's just made things worse. Later during lunch, Mizawa, one of Nakamura's close friends, comes over to talk to him, which surprises Tomozaki because he assumes Nakamura sent him, but Mizawa laughs and says it's nothing like that, explaining he just wanted to talk about what happened before. He says he respects how Tomozaki spoke up and stood his ground, adding that it was cool seeing someone say what they really felt. He tells Tomozaki that he's not alone and there are people who support him, and for the first time in his life, the guy is not a sore loser. That afternoon in the sewing room, Tomozaki tells Hinami about his chat with Mizawa and says they were thinking about hanging out sometime. Hinami likes the idea and says it's a good chance for him to take the lead by inviting a girl along as part of his next task. Tomozaki suggests Yuzu, explaining he recently talked to her about Nakamura's birthday, and if she's planning to get him a gift, she might appreciate some advice. Hinami agrees and says it's likely Yuzu wants to get something, so Tomozaki decides to invite her. But when he asks, Yuzu turns him down, saying she doesn't want a bum by her side while she shops. Tomozaki panics for a moment, realizing that Yuzu is the type of person who doesn't like other people doing things for her. After assessing the situation, he quickly comes up with a new idea. He tells her he's also planning to buy a gift for Nakamura to fix their relationship, so it won't be a problem if they shop together. Hearing that, Yuzu lights up and shakes him while rambling about how cool it is that he wants to patch things up. Once she realizes what she's doing, she sits back down and happily agrees to come along. Later that day, Mizawa catches Tomozaki by his locker and jokingly calls him out. He says he's noticed Tomozaki's riz going up, pointing out his new appearance and how close he's been with both Hinami and Yuzu. That night during dinner, Tomozaki gets a notification on his phone, an invite to a group chat with Yuzu, Mizawa, and Hinami. Unsure of how to respond, he hesitates, but when his sister sees the screen and assumes it's some weird group invite, he explains it's just his classmates. Later in his room, Tomozaki decides to stop overthinking it and finally joins the chat. The others greet him and ask him if to meet on the weekend. On Saturday, while waiting at their meeting spot, Tomozaki tries to mentally prepare himself, but Hinami tells him to calm down and not stress so much. He tells her he's not used to touching grass like an average Annie and Dare viewer, and she reminds him that he's the one who suggested shopping. She tells him to suck it up and treat it like training for his next task. Just then, Mizawa arrives, and Hinami switches to her friendly mode, chatting easily with him, which surprises Tomozaki. Yuzu arrives shortly after, and as they start chatting, Tomozaki watches how naturally she fits in, wondering if he'll ever be able to do the same. They head into the store and begin browsing for Nakamura's birthday present, but even after checking out a bunch of items, Yuzu still can't decide on anything. She turns to Tomozaki for advice, and he casually says that they should probably think about what Nakamura would actually like before choosing anything. It's not the deepest insight, but it somehow helps her snap into focus. Just then, Yuzu taps him on the shoulder and points toward Hinami and Mizawa, whispering that there's been gossip going around school that the two of them might be secretly dating. Tomozaki acts surprised, but his mind immediately flashes back to the task Hinami gave him to make 2 suggestions during the outing. She had told him that making simple, well-timed suggestions could shape how people feel in a group, and that if he practiced this enough, he could eventually handle even bigger social circles. A little while later, as they sit down with drinks to take a break, Yuzu asks if he's figured out what he wants to buy. He admits he hasn't and turns the question back on her, so she says she's still unsure. Tomozaki tells her to choose something that Nakamura would actually use, but she immediately brushes that off, not expecting much from Mr. Socially Awkward. Still, he insists he might actually be helpful, and says Nakamura seems into video games, takes care of his hair, and overall puts effort into how he looks. Yuja suddenly lights up and says she'll just get him some hair wax. When Hinami and Mizusawa come back, Yuja shares her decision, and Mizusawa says he knows a place that sells a good brand. Meanwhile, Hinami throws a sharp glance at Tomozaki, clearly waiting for him to complete the task she gave him. At the next store, Mizusawa playfully rubs some of the sample wax into Tomozaki's hair to show how the wax works. And when Tomozaki catches a reflection of himself in a nearby mirror, something shifts in his mindset. For the first time, he doesn't look like a nasty hermit, and with a little more confidence, he walks over to tell the others what he's planning to get for Nakamura. Once that's done, Mizusawa suggests grabbing something to eat, and everyone agrees, especially Hinami, who lights up the second she hears the words cheese pizza. After lunch, the group wraps up the day and heads their separate ways. That evening, Tomozaki texts Yuza asking where she heard the rumor about Mizusawa and Hinami. She replies that it's a pretty common topic at school and that most people assume they're a couple. On Monday, when Tomozaki meets with Hinami in the sewing room for their usual session, she immediately tells him he failed his assignment. Tomozaki tries to argue that he made a valid suggestion by recommending the electronics store, but Hinami shuts it down, reminding him that he was supposed to give 2 solid suggestions, not just one. With a clear look of sorrow on his face, he wonders if Hinami is really dating Mizusawa but chooses not to ask her. When she asks if he noticed something different about himself, Tomozaki says his looks have definitely improved. He also mentions that Mizusawa's suggestions about the gifts were decent, though the first store was too expensive for him. Hearing that, Hinami walks over and grabs him by the lips, telling him to stop putting himself down all the time. She says there wasn't anything in that store Nakamura would have wanted, and explains that being able to make a suggestion is only part of the skill. It's how confidently and naturally you deliver it that makes people follow along. Tomozaki wants to argue, but in the end, he knows a woman is always right and stays quiet. Later in class, their teacher announces that student council elections are coming up and asks who wants to run. Hinami stands up right away, which doesn't surprise anyone, including Tomozaki. But before the teacher can move on, Minami suddenly raises her hand too, looks straight at Hinami, and says with full confidence that she's going to win. Later, when Hinami and Tomozaki meet in the sewing room for their usual catch-up, she lets him know that because the student council elections are coming up, their meetings will be on hold for a while. But instead of leaving him without a task, she hands him a new challenge. He has to be Minami's campaign manager. She says Minami's the type who's popular and easy to talk to, so working with her would help Tomozaki increase his social credits. Tomozaki isn't sure if he's the right guy for the job and says he doesn't want to ruin Minami's chances by getting involved. But Hinami brushes it off. She says there's no way Minami can beat her in the first place, so there's nothing to worry about. As he walks out, thinking about this sudden assignment, he bumps into Minami in the hallway. When he asks if she has a second, Minami jokingly asks if he's going to confess his undying love for her. Ignoring that, he takes the chance to offer his help as her campaign manager, but Minami gently shuts it down and says she doesn't think he's dependable enough for that kind of job. Later that day, Tomozaki heads to the library, but he just sits at his usual spot, looking completely lost in thought. Fuka, sitting nearby, notices this and asks what's bothering him. He tells her he's thinking about the student council elections, and she admits she's also been wondering why Minami decided to run. Tomozaki guesses that Minami probably wants to change something about the school, but Fuka quietly says she thinks Minami might want to change something about herself too. She admits she understands that feeling and shyly asks him not to tell anyone, which he finds cute. As he walks home, he keeps thinking about what Fuka said earlier. He wonders what it is that Minami wants to change about herself, especially since, from the outside, she seems to already have everything: popularity, friends, confidence, and those big juicy melons. The next morning, as he approaches the school gates, he sees Minami actively campaigning with a cheerful smile on her face. She introduces him to Yumi, a junior from her club, whom she's picked as her campaign manager. Soon after, he runs into Hinami, who is also out campaigning. She's chosen Mizusawa to be her manager, which Tomozaki admits is a smart move because Mizusawa is great at talking to people. Later in the day, Tomozaki once again runs into Minami, who is running around the hallway. When he asks what's the hurry, she laughs and shows him a copy of her campaign flyer. After reading it, he points out that it needs work, so he takes her to the copy room to print out an updated version. Grateful for the help, Minami thanks him, and Tomozaki tells her that since she's a dork when it comes to serious stuff like this, he's willing to lend his brain power. She finds the idea of having a brain behind the scenes cool and admits she could really use the support, especially since her current manager, Yumi, has club duties after school. Curious, she asks why he's even bothering to help her, so Tomozaki says it's because he wants to beat Hinami. He explains that in games, the tougher the opponent, the more satisfying it is to win, and Hinami is no doubt a tough opponent. Minami teases him for acting all serious, but she says she feels more confident knowing he's backing her. She admits she was feeling a bit down earlier and thought she could never win, but with the brain on her side, she actually has a solid chance. As they continue forward, Tomozaki grins and suggests they add something that the students will appreciate. Afterward, the two walk to the gym, and Tomozaki comes up with a plan to secure votes. At the gym, Minami goes straight to Tama and sticks her head under her shirt, sniffing her like a dog. While they're messing around, a senior comes over and knocks Minami on the head, asking why she's disturbing their practice. Minami apologizes and whispers that she's campaigning. She also mentions her idea of getting an electric ball pump for the sports teams, and the senior admits that would be useful and says she'd back her up if she followed through with it. With the votes secured, Minami joins Tomozaki and tells Tama that she unhooked her plot armor before leaving. That evening, Minami and Tomozaki are sitting on a playground bench near their neighborhood. She thanks him for the help, but when he says it's all because of her personality, she jokingly asks if he's proposing to her. After that, she asks what his plans are for tomorrow, and Tomozaki says they will try to secure the majority of votes, cutting him off. She suddenly asks why he's going all out just to beat Hinami. Instead of answering directly, he throws the same question back at her. Minami explains that the top spot is all anyone ever remembers, and coming in second always feels like fading into the background. She says she's tired of always being number 2 next to Hinami and wants to prove she can be the best for once. The next day, as Tomozaki arrives at school, he asks the style that Hinami uses to win people over. He then comes up with his own approach and fills Minami in on it as they move on to the next step of their campaign. Later, Tomozaki visits the gym again and has Tama help him test how sound travels from different points in the room. When they're done, she warns Tomozaki not to push Minami too hard because she tends to overwork herself trying to do everything alone. Tomozaki promises to keep an eye on her and make sure she doesn't overdo it. The next day, while he's working on the speech, Minami tells him she's managed to speak with all the first-year students. Tomozaki had intentionally told her to do that because he knew younger students might be won over by the idea of air conditioners in every classroom, while older ones would know it's not that simple. With that angle, they secure the support of the first years and sports clubs. Tomozaki then hands her the speech he wrote for her, and as they go through it together, neither of them notices Hinami watching them from a distance with a calm smile on her face. After she leaves, Minami reads the speech and jokingly tries to slap him, but he dodges and calls her a slowpoke, which makes her laugh. The two then high-five, eager to secure a victory against Hinami as a team. The next morning, Tomozaki is walking to class when Hinami notices that he looks much happier and is doing well for himself. She also says she misses dueling him on TACFAM, but Tomozaki says they are still dueling, just in a different game this time. During the school assembly, the candidates for student council president step up to give their campaign speeches in front of the entire student body. Hinami goes first, and as she speaks, she wins the crowd over by making a few jokes here and there. As she gets to the serious stuff, Tomozaki realizes she's using the same campaign promises he and Minami came up with. She also acknowledges that installing air conditioners in every class is a hard task, but since every faculty room has one, the students should have one too. Pointing out the privileges teachers receive, she manages to rile up the crowd behind her. As she wraps up her speech, the entire hall of NPCs is buzzing with excitement, and Tomozaki can't help but wonder if this is what Hinami meant when she talked about controlling the atmosphere of a group. Right after, Yumi walks up to the podium to deliver a few supportive words for Minami before her turn. When Minami finally steps forward, Tomozaki heads upstairs to the second floor and plays the sound recording they prepared in advance, cracking a well-timed joke matching the audio. Minami gets a big reaction from the students. When she finishes, she dashes backstage and throws her arms around to surprise Tomozaki, thanking him with a big smile. Yumi also joins, praising Tomozaki for coming up with this brilliant idea. After the event ends, they step outside and run into Hinami and Mizawa, and both girls exchange polite compliments about each other's speeches. Mizawa, a little surprised, says he didn't know Tomozaki was working with Minami, but before Tomozaki can say anything, Minami proudly jumps in and calls him her secret weapon. Hinami gives him a little smirk and says they're still rivals until the elections are over. As they walk away, Minami jokes that seeing Hinami and Mizawa side by side really makes it look like they're bumping uglies in secret. When election day finally arrives, everyone's nervous as the votes are counted. In the end, Hinami wins, and even though Minami loses, she takes it with a smile. Tomozaki and Minami end up on the school roof, quietly sipping juice to cool off their disappointment. Minami says she might have lost this time, but she's not giving up and plans to try even harder next time. Seeing her act so positively, he can't tell if she's really okay with it, but he agrees that losing doesn't mean they should stop chasing what they want. Later that day, he meets Hinami again in the sewing room, where she brings up Minami's speech and guesses that he came up with it. He confirms it, and she laughs, saying only a dork like him would think of that kind of trick. Tomozaki says he hoped it would be enough to push Minami to the top, but she still lost in the end. Hinami tells him it was actually a great move and advises him not to beat himself up over the loss. Then he brings up how she used their campaign promises in her own speech, calling it a low blow. Hinami just smiles and tells him that next time, if he wants to help someone like Minami, he should be more careful about what he shares, because Minami tends to talk too much. She also admits that it was a lot of fun going against her all-time rival in TACFAM, and praises him for getting better at the game of life. She then holds up her phone and reminds him that now that the elections are over, he still has one last task to complete, getting a shoddy to taste test his popsicle. After their talk, Tomozaki finds himself standing in front of the library, staring at his phone. When Fuka arrives and asks if he's coming in, he follows her inside but keeps getting distracted, trying to work up the nerve to ask her to the movies. She notices how weird he's acting and checks if everything's alright. He stumbles over his words, trying to bring up the topic of the movie. Fuka realizes what he's about to ask, and though she gets a little flustered, she listens quietly. Finally, Tomozaki manages to blurt out his invitation, and to his relief, Fuka says yes. For the next few hours, he reads Fuka's favorite book so they can skip the engagement and go straight to the honeymoon. As he leaves the library, he notices Tama standing by a window. Curious, he walks over and asks why she's still at school. Turning toward the window, she says both Hinami and Minami are still out there training. She explains that Minami has been working harder than ever since the election and worries she's pushing herself too much just to keep up with Hinami. Her words remind Tomozaki of what Minami once told him, that she just wanted to be first for once in her life. The next day, while he's chatting with Hinami, she casually mentions that Minami started practicing earlier than usual, much to Tomozaki's surprise. Hinami then asks him if pushing non-stop toward a single goal is good for a person, and he says no. Hinami agrees that there's nothing wrong with giving your all, but also points out that some challenges can be too much for one person to handle. Later, Tomozaki gets startled by Minami in the halls, and she jokingly asks if he's ready to confess his undying love for her. Ignoring her pick-me behavior, he comments she's been training extra hard. Minami admits she's trying to catch up because the election ate up so much of her time, and she doesn't want to fall behind in other areas. She then asks who told him about her training, and he admits it was Hinami. Afterward, she says she's heading to the cafeteria to grab lunch, but when she invites him, he says he'll just grab something from the convenience store instead. As she walks away, Tomozaki wonders if he just accidentally turned down an offer to eat with her. That evening, as he exits the library, he sees Tama again at the window and joins her to watch Hinami and Minami practicing. They talk about how Minami's been working extra hard lately because she lost the election, and Tomozaki asks if she's always been this competitive. Tama opens up, saying she didn't become friends with Minami until the second term of their first year. Back then, she was introverted and had no idea how to make friends, but Minami made it her personal mission to annoy her every day. No matter how much Tama tried to avoid her, Minami kept showing up. Eventually, they started talking, and soon Tama was able to open up to more people and make friends. She also reveals that one day, Hinami approached her and said Minami had come to her for advice on how to get close to Tama. Hinami told Minami to just talk to her regularly, but Minami chose to keep annoying her instead. Tama says Hinami made her promise not to let Minami know, since it would probably embarrass her. That's why, even though Tama really doesn't need saving, she purposely acts dumb and lets her play her role so she feels good about herself. Later, as they meet outside the convenience store, Tomozaki watches them act like goofs and realizes they share a strong bond. The next day, Nanami dreams about the time her basketball team lost to Hinami's. When she wakes up, she realizes she's late for her night jog but decides to go anyway. The next day in class, Tomozaki and Tama notice that Minami is dozing off, and it makes them wonder why she's been pushing herself so hard. Later, when he drops by the library, Fuka brings up that she's noticed it too, and says Minami seems to be constantly trying to catch up to Hinami. Tomozaki asks how she can be so sure, and Fuka explains that, as someone who writes stories, she's gotten used to reading people. She says that Minami is pretty easy to understand, but Hinami's different because she keeps her thoughts guarded. After leaving the library, Tomozaki sees Tama by the window again, silently watching Minami train with the others. He walks over and stands beside her, and Tama mentions that Minami's been going too far with her training ever since the election. She says she's not sure if she should step in and say something or just let Minami keep going at her own pace. Later that evening, while walking home together, Tomozaki asks Minami directly if she's pushing herself so hard just to beat Hinami. Minami admits that she doesn't want to come out as a total failure like him, so she plans to keep challenging herself until she becomes someone who can stand out too. The next morning when Hinami arrives at the track, she's surprised to see Minami already stretching there. She comments that Minami is early again, and Minami just laughs it off. As the two of them run together, Minami's mind flashes back to their first match in middle school, when her team lost to Hinami's. She was not ready to give up so easily, but her teammates reassured her that they gave it their all, and that was enough for them. Back in the present, Minami nearly loses her balance while running, but manages to recover just in time, leaving Hinami worried. Later, Hinami meets with Tomozaki and tells him she's concerned Minami will soon reach her breaking point. Tomozaki agrees and wonders aloud why Minami seems so fixated on beating her. After hinting at the basketball tournament Minami lost, Hinami says that it's not her story to share, so Tomozaki decides to ask someone else who might know. He finds Yumi and brings up the subject of Minami's middle school days, hoping to understand more. While she tells the story of how Minami felt crushed after losing, Minami is out doing jogs day and night. The next day, she dozes off in class until the teacher wakes her up. That evening, rain starts pouring, and both Tomozaki and Tama feel relieved because they assume even someone as stupid as Minami will not run in the rain. But when they look out at the field, they're stunned to see someone in a raincoat heading towards the track, thinking it's Minami. They rush down to stop her, only to learn that it's actually Hinami. They believe she might have gone home, but she's watching Hinami practice from the sidelines. The next day, Tama approaches her in class, and Hinami says she got plenty of rest yesterday, which means she's ready to practice again. However, Tomozaki notices Minami leaving school early and decides to follow her. He eventually catches up with her at the train station, and while they wait, he brings up the middle school basketball match between her and Hinami, asking if that's what started her desire to become an alpha woman. Minami explains that after losing to Hinami's team, she later watched Hinami lose a game as well. What stood out most to her was seeing Hinami cry when the other team was declared the winner. That moment made her realize how hard Hinami worked, and she admired that deeply. When they got into the same school, Hinami approached her because she remembered her from the time they had the match. She said she could tell from Minami's movements that she trains really hard and wishes they were on the same team. From that day, she wanted to be like her, not just good, but someone who could give their all. After they became friends, Hinami beat her again in the high jump, which made her realize that no matter how hard she tried, it wouldn't matter unless she came first. Tomozaki tries to comfort her and says she's amazing in her own way, but she brushes it off and tells him she forgot something back at school before walking away. A few days later, Hinami tells Tomozaki that Minami hasn't shown up to practice for a couple of days, which makes him more anxious. Tomozaki tells her he told Hinami that coming first isn't everything, but Hinami asks him how he'd feel if he lost his first spot in TACFAM. Tomozaki admits beating someone in a one-on-one feels good, but if he were to only chase the first spot, it would take the fun out of the game. While they are talking, Minami approaches the track team coach and hands her resignation from the club. Later that day, he overhears Tama asking Minami if it's true she quit the track team, which catches him off guard. Minami confirms it, saying she gave it some thought over the weekend and felt it was the right thing to do. Just then, Hinami walks over, and Minami apologizes for suddenly quitting, even though Hinami says she always enjoyed running with her. After class, Minami says goodbye to Tama before she heads out, but Tomozaki stops her and asks if she wants to walk home with him and Tama. Tama offers to skip training too, so the three of them can go together. Minami agrees and apologizes to Yumi before leaving with them. While waiting, Minami tries to keep the mood light with small talk, but Tama suddenly asks if she hates Hinami. Minami says that she could never hate someone like Hinami because she's kind, talented, and hardworking, but she admits that being around her makes her feel small. As her eyes tear up, she confesses that she's jealous of Hinami, even though she loves her. Since she keeps losing, she is scared that if she stays on the team with those feelings, she might grow to resent her. Tama gently leans over and pulls Minami's head to her chest, comforting her and telling her she doesn't need to be the best at everything because she is her hero. She says Minami might not be top of the class or the fastest on the team, but she's always the first to care about others, and that matters more. Tama tells her that while she admires Hinami too, to her, Minami is the real hero. Then, in classic Tama fashion, she teases Minami and says she's already #1 at being the biggest idiot in their group. Minami laughs through her tears and bites Tama's finger before hugging her tightly. Tomozaki just watches and smiles, happy that Tama brought the real Minami back. The next day, Minami goes to the track and apologizes to her coach and teammates, and they welcome her back without hesitation. Later, Tomozaki meets Hinami in the sewing room, where she gives him a new task: give Nakamura his birthday present and keep a conversation going with him for at least 3 minutes. In class, after Yuzu gives Nakamura her gift, Tomozaki gathers his courage and hands over his own present, which turns out to be a game controller. Nakamura accepts it with a simple thanks, but Tomozaki sees Hinami subtly reminding him that he has to talk to him for 3 minutes. Struggling to keep the conversation going, Tomozaki blurts out the first thing that pops into his head. He asks Nakamura if the rumors about Mizawa and Hinami dating are true. That evening, the whole group meets up at a cafe, and the girls can't stop laughing over Tomozaki's random question. Minami then turns to Hinami and seriously asks if the rumor is true. Hinami assures everyone that there's nothing going on between her and Mizusawa. After that, Minami suddenly apologizes for how she acted the previous week and gives everyone a little gift, a strange-looking cat keychain. Tomozaki thinks they look kind of weird, but the girls love them, and seeing their reactions makes Minami smile a little brighter. As summer break finally begins, Tomozaki meets Hinami at the station, and she is disappointed to see that he still dresses up as Mark Zuckerberg. While they sit together in a restaurant, Tomozaki hopes to relax, but Hinami has prepared a whole new set of tasks for him. She casually says that his main goal for the summer is to swipe Fuka's V-card, much to his shock. He tells her there's no way someone like Fuka would ever let him hit it, but Hinami says that even broken clocks show the right time twice a day. She points out that they already share common interests, and for some reason, Fuka seems to be into good-for-nothing losers. She promises to help him prepare so he doesn't screw it up, and announces that they'll go on a pretend date for practice. Hinami writes out a list of spots they'll visit and tells him that he has to take the lead and act like he planned everything. When he checks the list, he sees that the first stop is a clothing store. Once they arrive, Hinami helps him pick out some shirts that would suit him, and when they're done, she gives him a backpack as a present so he can get rid of that fanny pack that screams virgin. Tomozaki hesitates, saying he can't just accept it, but Hinami says he can repay her by getting her something too. She picks a small metal badge, and even though he thinks it's not an equal trade, she insists on keeping it anyway. With their little exchange done, they head to the second location on the list, a gaming store, where they play a round of Takvam. Tomozaki acknowledges that she has gotten much better since the last time they played, but he beats her anyway. Afterward, they head to Starbucks, where she teaches him how to add friends online and tells him to message Fuka. He writes a message and nervously shows it to her, but Hinami reads it out loud just to tease him. Although he's embarrassed, she says it's good and encourages him to send it. She reminds him that Fuka doesn't respond to her immediately, so she might take some time with him, too. However, to both of their surprise, Fuka replies instantly, saying she's free except on Tuesdays and would love to hang out sometime. Hinami says that Fuka must be ovulating, which makes the guy blush. Later on, Hinami invites Tomozaki to join her and some classmates for an overnight barbecue. He starts panicking again, but she tells him it's actually a ploy to get Yuza and Nakamura together. Besides, it'll be a perfect chance to get closer to the guys and improve his social skills with them. She says they'll be meeting at Minami's house to discuss the trip, and gives him a new task: to mess with Mizusawa 3 times, explaining that light teasing is how guys bond. However, Tomozaki wonders if someone as composed as Mizusawa can even be messed with. The next day, he meets Tomozaki, and the guy immediately notices that he no longer looks like a fashion reject. Tomozaki realizes he's trying to mess with him, and doing it back to him won't be that easy. When Hinami joins them, they head to Minami's house, but she apologizes to her because her grandma has suddenly dropped by, so they can't stay there. Hinami quickly suggests they go to Tomozaki's place instead because he lives close by. When they step inside, his sister is shocked and delighted to see her loser brother bring friends home. While going to their room, Mizusawa jokes about his family being overly friendly, but Tomozaki teases him back. Once in his room, Minami immediately starts poking around, jokingly looking for hidden corn magazines, but all she finds are game controllers. Tomozaki explains that these controllers make Takvam too difficult, so he no longer uses them. Afterward, they start talking about how they can help Yuza and Nakamura grow closer during the trip. Mizusawa suggests they let the lovebirds light the fire, but Tomozaki argues it'll be too hard for them. By doing so, he completes 2 of his 3 tasks. Mizusawa then says they will have exams next year, which means they won't hang out as much, and Tomozaki jokingly calls him mushy. With all 3 tasks done, Tomozaki heads to the kitchen to clean up the plates, and he runs into Mizusawa in the hallway. Mizusawa notices the hair wax Tomozaki bought and jokes that he's not using it. Tomozaki admits he doesn't really know how, so Mizusawa offers to help and styles his hair right there. As he's doing so, Tomozaki pulls out his phone to record, and Mizawa comments on how he takes everything so seriously. He also praises him for planning Minami's speech during the elections and asks why he takes everything so seriously. Tomozaki says he takes everything as a game and he doesn't want to come in second place. Mizawa understands his approach but suggests he should also have fun because games are meant to be for entertainment. He even addresses him with his first name, Fumiya, which surprises him. When they return, the girls are impressed with his new look, and Minami starts teasing them, saying the boys seem a little too close now. As everyone gets ready to leave, Tomozaki watches them go and feels genuinely happy, thinking that maybe his summer is going to be fun after all. He then pulls out his phone and reminds himself that he has a date with Fuka tomorrow. The next day, before he meets up with Fuka, he goes through the flashcards Hinami gave him to have some topics to discuss. Soon after, Fuka shows up looking like a whole buffet, and they walk to the movies, excited to see how it'll come out. Tomozaki even asks why she's wearing full sleeves in the summer, and she says it's because her skin burns in the sun. Once outside the theater, Fuka gets super excited but then gets shy and suggests they head inside. As the movie rolls, Tomozaki looks over and realizes she has a gentle smile on her face. After the film, they stop by a small restaurant to eat, and Tomozaki eagerly talks about the highlights of the movie. Then suddenly, he becomes nervous and starts worrying that he's saying boring things. He remembers the flashcards Hinami gave him and switches topics using one of them, thinking it'll help. He thinks he saved the date, but Fuka suddenly tells him that something feels off. She says he's acting differently, like someone harder to talk to now, and that throws Tomozaki off, making him feel like he's ruined everything. On their way home though, Fuka thanks him for the movie and explains that she struggles to talk to guys in general, but he's the only one she can talk to so casually. She tells him she actually had a great time and would like to hang out with him again, which instantly lifts his spirits. Later, as he walks home, he calls Hinami to tell her how the date went. She's glad things went well and tells him to invite Fuka to a fireworks show next, saying it'll be a romantic follow-up. When Tomozaki gets home, he sends Fuka a message, and when she agrees to come, he starts to look forward to his next date. However, he is worried about how things will turn out at the beach party. On the day of the trip, Tomozaki meets Minami, and as they take the bus, she thanks him for being the hero she needed. Once they get together, they take a picture to immortalize the moment. After everyone boards the train, they manage to make Nakamura and Yuza sit together, but they're far from patching up. Meanwhile, Hinami gives Tomozaki his next task. He needs to make 3 interactions with Nakamura that involve either teasing him, disagreeing with him, or suggesting something. She also tells him to focus on bonding with Mizawa since he's the most approachable guy in the group. After sightseeing for a little while, the squad finally reaches its destination, and Hinami immediately begins assigning tasks. She groups Yuzu with Nakamura for the food prep, pairs herself with Tomozaki, and the remaining 3 are put in one group. While getting the fire started, Tomozaki asks her why she made these pairs, and she says it's part of her plan to make Yuzu and Nakamura smash. She also says she can be her real self around him, which means she can relax, and if she paired him with someone else, he'd probably be more useless than Sakura. Soon after, they start cooking, and everyone enjoys a good time teasing each other, while Tomozaki watches like an NPC. After they are done, Nakamura suggests playing in the river, and the girls immediately show up in their swimsuits, except for Yuzu. As she gets into the water with Nakamura, Tomozaki is glad they will finally have some fun, but Teiki suddenly shows up like a third wheel and scares her with a crab. This causes Yuzu to slip, but Nakamura catches her in time, and when they share a mildly romantic moment, Tomozaki sees it as a small win for their matchmaking plan. As everyone returns to their cabins, Nakamura mentions wanting to play cards, and Mizawa says he has a deck. Nakamura turns to Tomozaki to send him off to grab the cards, but Mizawa changes the topic by asking about Nakamura's ex, sparing Tomozaki from getting treated like a servant. Noticing this, Tomozaki is shocked that Mizawa is helping him out and listens to the conversation more closely. As the guys talk, Nakamura says his ex still texts him even though she's already with someone else, but he doesn't care much. When he mentions that she's packing some fine nullins, Tomozaki is shocked to be a part of a guy talk. Mizawa turns to him and asks what he thinks, and Tomozaki bluntly says the girl's just playing with him, which makes the boys laugh. Nakamura shows a slight frustration at his comment, but it all gets resolved when Teiki asks him to pump and dump her. They ask him if he's into someone else, and he vaguely tells them this girl comes to him for romantic advice, which means she's into someone else. Later on, Mizawa and Tomozaki text in the group chat, gossiping with the girls about what happened. Hinami reveals that Yuzu told Nakamura she's interested in a guy, and Mizusawa connects those dots. Realizing Nakamura was talking about Yuzu earlier, a little later, Nakamura calls them over to the girls' cabin to play some cards. During the game, Mizusawa jokes that Hinami and Tomozaki are way too into it for something so simple. Tomozaki suddenly realizes he's gotten too caught up in playing and almost forgot about his mission. When everyone starts grumbling about losing, Nakamura teases them for being terrible, so Tomozaki jumps on the moment and reminds him he actually scored the lowest, getting another good laugh from the group. Then Minami starts poking around Mizusawa's love life, and Nakamura spills that he's been talking to a girl from another school. Mizusawa brushes it off, saying he's not even sure he wants to date her, although he has enough riz to score anyone he wants. When Mizusawa heads to the bathroom, Tomozaki follows and uses the opportunity to connect with him by asking about the girl. Mizusawa says he doesn't even like her that much, but even then, he might end up dating her. This skill is alien to Tomozaki, who can't work a chick if she comes with a manual. He asks Mizusawa how he can date someone if he doesn't like them, and the guy doesn't give him an answer. Later that night, they head to the bathhouse, and the girls ask the boys not to peek. Once inside, the girls talk about how to get Yuzu and Nakamura closer, while the boys walk in and are left speechless after noticing how Tomozaki is packing an 8-inch demon. Taiki lifts him up like some kind of legend, and when he drops him, Tomozaki ends up face to face with Nakamura. Seeing an opening to complete his final task, Tomozaki makes a jab the size of Nakamura's pickle, making the boys crack up in the middle of the bath. After the bath, the group splits up for the walk back to camp as part of a scary game. Yuzu and Nakamura go together, and Minami walks with Taiki and Mizusawa, leaving Hinami and Tomozaki alone. Hinami suddenly grabs onto Tomozaki and screams out of nowhere, making him panic until he realizes she's pretending to be in danger to train him on how to be an alpha male. As she gets closer to him, Tomozaki's lightsaber starts buzzing, but they are interrupted by a bug passing by. She starts to act scared again and hugs him from the back, which makes things even harder for Tomozaki. As they walk together with their arms locked, Tomozaki notices the same bug on the road and tries to squash it, but it scares Hinami so much that she falls to her knees. Realizing it's all part of the act, Tomozaki offers to lift her, but when he does it, it appears as if Hinami is about to kiss him. Thinking it's part of his training, Tomozaki continues to make eye contact with Hinami, but when she brings her mouth closer, he suddenly panics and pulls away. Hinami laughs, saying she won, and they continue to walk towards the camp. After arriving at the cabin, the group gathers outside and poses for a video together, enjoying the moment as a fun memory. During the recording, Nakamura starts teasing Yuzu, and the two walk off together, leaving the rest of the group behind. When Hinami acts confused, Mizusawa casually mentions to the others that Yuzu and Nakamura made plans to smash after the trip, making her realize she's an expert in relationships. She says they should take dating lessons from him, and even wishes him good luck with the chick from the other school. That night, while everyone else is winding down, Tomozaki gets a message from Hinami asking to meet. He steps out and finds her waiting, so they can talk about how he did during the trip. Hinami then asks him about his tasks of messing with Nakamura 3 times, and he says he accomplished that task, listing all the times he talked to him. As they quietly go over his progress, they suddenly hear footsteps coming toward them. Not wanting anyone to get the wrong idea, Tomozaki quickly hides, just before Mizusawa shows up and takes the seat next to Hinami. Mizusawa brings up Yuzu and Nakamura, saying it's crazy how they still haven't figured out how they feel about each other. He calls them both clueless but admits he admires their honesty and the way they always stay true to themselves. He goes through the positive traits of everyone in the group, explaining how everyone is goofing around and being true to themselves, and maybe he should try that too. He further explains how life is like a game, but he feels so detached from himself that he never really experiences much. He then looks at Hinami and says they both understand each other because they both experience the same thing. Hinami admits that people expect a lot from her, which is why she has to suppress her real self and be perfect all the time. Despite her pretending to be her true self right now, Tomozaki knows she's still got a mask on because he's the only one who's seen her true side. After she says her piece, Mizusawa says she's incredible because usually he's the one who listens. But with her, he finds it easier to talk about himself. He knows she is still not being her true self, so he tells her that he actually likes her, and maybe one day they will be close enough so she doesn't have to act around him. As their conversation continues, Mizusawa suddenly confesses that he likes her. He says he knows she doesn't feel the same, but he still wants to understand himself better while trying to make her fall for him. He also admits this is the first time he's been true to himself, and even if he faced rejection, he still feels relieved. At that point, Tomozaki steps out and apologizes for eavesdropping on such a personal moment. Hinami covers for him, explaining that he only ran off earlier because he didn't want Mizawa to think anything strange was going on between them. She then suggests they all go back to their cabins and pretend this never happened. The next day, as they all return home, Tomozaki notes that Mizawa was able to take off the mask he had been wearing all this time. Hinami, on the other hand, was still unfazed and chose to keep up her act. As he walks home, he realizes that those two are very similar in one way, but then so different in the other. Later, Hinami texts Tomozaki and tells him that after his upcoming date with Fuka, he should confess to her. Tomozaki understands she's asking him to put on a mask like she has, and it makes him wonder what he should do in this situation. That evening, he meets Fuka at the station and walks with her to the spot where the fireworks display will take place. As they chat on the way, he tells her a bit about his trip with the others. They also stop at a candy apple stall, and Tomozaki gets one for Fuka, which makes her really happy. Soon after, they arrive at the spot and both confess that they haven't seen fireworks in a long time. As they continue to make small talk, Tomozaki makes the conscious decision not to use the flashcards but rather to speak what he feels like. Even though there is a lot of silence between them, it still feels better because it's truthful. Once the fireworks start lighting up the sky, he asks Fuka if she finds it easier to talk to him now, and she smiles and says she does, which makes him feel genuinely happy. As the fireworks end, Tomozaki remembers what Hinami told him about confessing, but instead of doing that, he just says they should head home. At the station, he sends a message to Hinami asking if he can call, but she replies saying she'll come to meet him in person. When she arrives, she immediately asks if he confessed to Fuka. He tells her no, and not because he couldn't, but rather because he didn't want to. He explains that even though he didn't follow the script or use the memorized topics, which made most of the conversations awkward, initially, he thought it was a disaster, but then he learned that Fuka still enjoyed the conversation. That made him realize the problem before was that he wasn't acting like himself. Hinami doesn't seem convinced and says that if that kind of situation happens again, he should still have a strategy ready, but Tomozaki disagrees. He says the focus shouldn't be on planning everything because what really matters is understanding if he genuinely likes Fuka or not. Hinami doesn't take his words well, saying people who talk about finding themselves sound dumb to her, and she believes life without goals or strategies is meaningless. But Tomozaki fires back, saying it's not right to use goals or tasks just to keep moving forward if they aren't real. To Hinami, it sounds like he's giving up, and she doesn't take it lightly. Without saying another word, she pulls out the metal badge he gave her from her bag and hands it back, telling him to return the backpack she gave him. Then she walks away, leaving him alone at the station. As her train pulls away, Tomozaki stands there quietly, blaming himself for breaking something that once felt special. A few days go by, and Tomozaki shuts himself in his room, doing nothing but playing TACFAM while thinking about his awkward fallout with Hinami. Just then, his sister barges in and tells him to come down for dinner, but before leaving, she throws some shade, saying she doesn't know why he's suddenly acting like a disgusting loser again. When he finally heads downstairs, she throws a whole tantrum, reminding him of how cool he looked when he brought friends home. She also reminds him that he's been ignoring his phone and some girl has been messaging him, but he's too caught up sulking to even check. He grabs his phone and sees a few unread texts from Fuka. She has asked him to go with her to pick up a new book, so he replies and agrees to meet up. His sister understands that he's going through some stuff and tells him to do his best again. Later, he heads to the station to meet Fuka, realizing it must be hard for her since he ignored her text for 2 days. After they meet up, they head to the bookstore together, and Tomozaki tells himself that he will not hide behind a mask, but rather be his true self. Even though he was feeling down at first, talking to Fuka, who is always honest with herself, made him feel much better. After she finds the book she needs, her happiness is visible on her face, which makes him realize she's the purest soul he knows. Afterward, they stop by a quiet restaurant for lunch, and when Tomozaki takes a bathroom break, he uses this as an opportunity to reflect on what he has become. He admits that putting on this mask at first was really something he wanted, and it made him really happy, but now he isn't so sure. After joining Fuka at the table, Tomozaki decides to open up, telling her why he was hard to talk to sometimes. He tells her that someone has been helping him work on himself, teaching him how to be more confident and social. He admits that back when they first started talking, most of their conversations were fueled by flashcard topics he memorized just to keep things going. But on the night of the fireworks, when she said she felt comfortable talking with him, he didn't use any planned lines at all. He admits that even though they were helpful, it felt like he was cheating at conversation, so now he's torn between his real self of this new version of him. Fuka listens quietly before gently telling him that when she first met him, he felt like he was detached from himself, and his facial expressions wouldn't match what he was saying. But then, other times he would be so enthusiastic about certain topics, and everything would align so perfectly. These were the moments when it was easier to talk to him, and when it was hard. He must have been using the topics on the flashcards. At first she felt kind of black and white, but over time she started to see more color, and it made her realize how different he actually was. She says if that growth is because of someone guiding him, then maybe that's not such a bad thing. Later that night, Tomozaki sends a text to Hinami, asking to talk. She acts like a typical tsundere at first, but eventually caves after he insists on meeting. When she arrives, he tells her that before meeting her, he used to think life was just a trash game with no good strategies, but she showed him that, just like Takvam, life could be something you actually play and enjoy. He says that the way she approaches life, with fixed plans and perfect moves, might look impressive, but it's not the only way. Hinami disagrees with some Jordan Peterson level biz, so he brings up something that hits closer to home. He reminds her that she's never been able to beat him in Takvam. He says the reason she keeps losing is that she doesn't know what she truly wants. In Takvam, he knows exactly what his goal is, and that's why he's able to connect with the game completely. He then tells her that moving forward, he wants to keep living life while figuring out who he really is instead of following someone else's blueprint. He's determined to prove to her that finding your own way isn't just possible, it's better. Hinami still thinks he's talking nonsense, but she agrees to try it his way for now. Even then, he wants her to continue being his guide, and he will just skip those tasks he doesn't agree with. Hinami agrees to it, and as they grab lunch together, Hinami casually hands him a new challenge. Since he's still playing the game of life, she says his next mission is to get a part-time job. When Tomozaki shows up for his job interview, he's surprised to find out that Mizawa already works there, and the two of them will be co-workers. It feels a little awkward, but also kind of reassuring. A little while later, he joins Mizawa, Hinami, Minami, and Yuza to help Yuza pick an outfit for her upcoming date with Nakamura. Yuza tries on a bunch of clothes, but no one can agree on what suits her best. Eventually, she asks Tomozaki for his opinion, and since he is a fashion reject himself, he just says she looks good in all of them. On another day, Tomozaki goes shopping again with Minami and Tama. While browsing, Minami spots a funny-looking keychain and insists it looks exactly like Tama. She ends up buying it and jokingly defends her choice while Tama acts like she's going to throw hands. Tomozaki also picks a keychain and gives it to his sister later that night. At first, she acts unimpressed, but when he casually mentions that Minami thought it was cute, she decides to keep it. Even with his part-time job keeping him busy, Tomozaki manages to juggle everything pretty well. He spends time with his friends, helps them out with random stuff, and even fits in a few dates with Fuka. And despite everything, he still makes time for Takvam, reminding himself that gaming is still part of who he is, even as the rest of his world keeps expanding. It's not about changing into someone completely different. It's about growing one step at a time while still holding on to the things that matter. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. If you made it to the end, comment, "I love feet" as proof.